Welcome to the 100 Master Coaches series featuring master coaches from around the world. Let's journey together on this 100 Master Coaches series, with your host, Coach Mel, MCC. Tony Latimer is a master executive coach, working globally with leaders in transition. He conducts and teaches the art of transformational coaching without models, pure connected presence. He has also developed the coaching app, which delivers success to coaches by helping their clients develop leadership skills, build new habits, and create measurable behavioral change. Now on to the show.
Hello, and welcome to the 100 Master Coaches show. This is Coach Mal, and today on the show, my special guest hails from Singapore. Will you please welcome Tony Latimer. Woohoo! Welcome to the show.
Good morning. Good morning.
How you been, Tony?
Good. It's Singapore. It's warm. It's a little bit wet. You know, we have two kinds of weather here. We have wet and warm, and we have warm and wet, and the seasons switch from one to the other.
Yes, a lot of variety, I guess, you know.
Absolutely.
In Melbourne here, we're getting into that space right now. But of course, it's Melbourne, so you've got 4 seasons in a day anyway. Right?
Absolutely.
So we're just going to jump in right now, Tony. Tell us, how did that coaching journey start for you?
Wow. So we're doing history here today, right?
Yes, a bit of that history lesson. Yeah, here we go.
Okay. Tempting to say I started coaching when coaching didn't exist. So I was a techie. I started life working on mainframes, you know, when the computer filled the room and had less power than a watch, right?
That's right.
So I went through various technical roles, and at one point I was working for a software company that was a partner to IBM back in the UK.
Okay.
And IBM were great. They not only did lots of great training for their people, but they were generous. They shared. So for some reason, as a sort of young, newly appointed manager, I got chosen to go on a leadership program. And when we got there, we were at Ravenhurst, a country house in Surrey. And we got there, and a guy called Alan Fine, a young tennis professional, showed up, and he's representing Timothy Galway's Inner Game. Yes. And we spent a week learning how to coach tennis players on tennis courts, which was fascinating. I mean, we don't need to go into detail, but it worked. It was awesome. And at the end of the week, I'm going up to the instructors. And so the people, Alan Fine trained the group I was in. He trained John Whitmore, Miles Downey, all famous names from the old days. Yeah. So this really was before coaching got into the world of work. So when I asked, how does this help me manage people? They said, don't know, we're sports people. We're trying to figure it out. We think it should, but we don't know how. The techie in me just kind of went back to work and said, okay, I'm going to think about this. So I started, everything I do, everything I teach came from those early days in the mid 80s of just starting to think about how you could use this non-directive approach to help people progress. And it was fascinating.
And it's funny that you say all those names. I've met John a couple of times, even in London at his home in Seven Oaks, and it was a beautiful time with him. But Alan Fine, oh my gosh, that is like a name in history. And in the game of tennis, right? It's like the groundwork that has been put in place before
Absolutely.
time began.
That was to the best of my knowledge, that was the first Galway's work there, shifting from the coach being the one who tells the player what to change to getting them to think about and find and discover for themselves. I think that was pretty much the earliest use of non-directive coaching.
I'd just like to expand on that just for a bit, because you mentioned such important experience that you've been exposed to. So talk a little bit about the interference, because I know that part of the model is this big thing called interference. And I'm sure in these days and age, we still face, if not more, interferences in our life. How is that relevant to us even today?
So this was the fascinating bit. The techie in me walked away from that training with that performance equation.
Yes.
Performance equals potential minus interference.
Yes.
Now, and something hit my brain and said, this is important. This is the key. In the inner game concept, the interference was that self-doubt, that fear.
Yeah.
One of the things I did over a period of time was went and figured out how to take that formula and apply it in the workplace. So what I've ended up with in my profitable leadership frameworks is defining in the corporate context, what exactly do we mean by potential? And then what exactly do we mean by interference?
Yeah.
And it's interesting because if you pin the equation, and you have to be very clear about what you're talking about. So when people say potential, we tend to use the word and think about, can we go up to the stars, the long term. I use it differently. I talk about the potential required for a specific job or a part of a job. So we pin it at that level.
Got it.
Once you do that, you can then define what is required for that job. It's then a lot easier to look at an individual and say, have they got it?
Yeah.
And if there are some gaps, how do we get them to that point?
Yeah.
And this is what makes it fascinating, because it becomes purely mathematical. So what we see happening in organizations is we don't get the performance we want from somebody. So we bring them in, we sit them down, and we talk about the performance, which in the equation is the result.
That's right.
And we say, not good enough, please do better.
Yes.
And then they go away. And then they come back and nothing's really changed. So we have the conversation again. Now, apart from the fact that you're now wasting time because you're just repeating yourself, if you've already told them, they know.
Yeah.
What then starts to happen in the brain is we start going, oh, are they the right person for the job? And that is invalid, because if you've pinned the equation at that level, it's now purely mathematical.
Yeah.
The potential is the constant. This is what's required for the job. That can't change.
Yeah.
And if the person's got it, they've got it. So what you then have to do, to go to your favorite one, is focus on the interference. What's getting in the way? And as well as defining what potential is, and there's three components: aptitude, attitude, and values. You then, when you look at interference, that's made up of three things as well. There are only three possible sources of interference. Skills, environment, and aspiration. Yeah. So it now becomes very easy. I can now look at you and say, you're not delivering the result I need in this job. Yeah. I know you can do it. Yeah. We just need to find the gap. So absolutely, for a manager coaching people on performance, it suddenly becomes so easy, because you just got two doors to open. There's going to be some stuff around skills, which is knowledge and confidence to apply the knowledge, and environment, things around them that are impacting them. Yeah. Open those doors, find them, fix them. And then the cool bit is it's mathematical. If you change the variable in the equation, I guarantee the result will change. Coaching is just physics and simple maths.
And you make it sound so simple, Tony.
It is. Doesn't mean it's easy necessarily, but it's simple.
Exactly. It's like going to the gym, right? All you have to do to build that bicep is to do reps, and how frequent you do it. And of course, the objective, right? If you want to go bulk, it's a different sort of reps. If you want to go lean, it's a different sort of reps. So it's a bit of that formula in place. And I'm just curious, right? I'm a formula guy, don't get me wrong, right? But then when it comes to the world of people, and people are not formulaic in that sense. So there is no formula to kind of stem people down, unless you beg to differ on this one, because everyone's kind of individual about it. What do you think?
Everybody is individual.
Yeah.
For sure. You've done this, you've moved countries. I can remember the first time in the late 70s when I sort of went from one side of the world to the other. And the minute you talk about anything, or even you just go from the UK across to Netherlands or Germany, and the first thing everybody says, oh, but it's different here. Yeah.
That's true.
And it's like, no, it's not. Well, it is, but it's actually different at a deeper level. It's different at an individual level.
Yeah.
Now, I've coached people from just about every nationality and country you can imagine, and it works. So how? Why does it work? Because when you get down to the individual level, they're just human beings.
Yeah, that's true.
And we're not telling the human being what to do. The whole process, I mean, coaching is that one interaction where it's just the process of making them think, and they've all got brains that will work the same way.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, a lot of times we are tempted to look at the differences, isn't it? We're like, oh, we're so different from one another, versus looking at what is similar. And actually the similar things would somehow help break down some of the walls, right?
I would go even further. I would say just forget differences, forget similarities, just focus on the individual. Just go down to deep into who is that you are with right there and deal with that.
That is beautiful.
Because the rest of it is just trying to put labels and badges and judgments on people. So let go of all that. Yeah.
Very, very true. Early days of coming into Singapore, early days of even coaching. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, interesting. I established my coaching practice when we came back here about 2000, so 20 plus years ago.
Yeah.
So my wife's from Singapore. My kids were young. They came in and went through local schools. Coaching then, if you went to meet an HR director, you had to explain what coaching was every time.
Of course.
Yeah. And in fact, quite literally, I just know you're from Malaysia, so you'll understand this one. If you went onto Google search or whatever, I don't think even Google was there, but the browsers in those days, if you typed into the search box executive coach, you got the Singapore to KL bus timetable. Literally.
Yeah.
It took a few years before people like you and I sort of scored a little higher on the rankings than the bus service. So nobody knew what it was. In fact, I remember my first few projects, I gave up talking about coaching. I can remember having a conversation on one of my first main projects. I knew from the thinking I'd done that in an organization, one of the best uses of coaching was for the implementation of learning. Yeah. Because people waste so much time, go do some training, and then nobody says, are you using what you learned? Right? So guided implementation of learning. And I can remember having a conversation with an HR head about some training we were planning for a team of their people. And I just said, have you ever trained these people before? And they went, yeah, about 4 or 5 years ago. Oh, okay. So 6 months after the event, what was different? And they went, yeah, not much, to be honest. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So what we sold them was we do the training, and then every individual is going to have 4 sessions dotted over about a 6-month period, just talking to me one-on-one. Yeah. And they went, well, that's a good idea. And yeah, it helps them just put stuff into practice. So I'll come to your office. I can deal with about 8 people a day. And that was how we did it. Yeah. So the early days, just forget trying to teach them what coaching is. Just look at how you apply it and what its practical implementation is. That was the way.
And how the world has changed. And still, there are gaps. There are HR people still asking, what is coaching? What is mentoring? What do you think has shifted along the way that helped people assimilate to understand what coaching is and exposure to those years, the 20 years?
So over the last 20 years, we've seen various things emerge. So we've gone from, we have no idea what this is, fairly predominant for the one-on-one coaching was the phone call we used to get, which said, yeah, I wonder if you could help. We kind of promoted this person last year and it didn't really work out. Can you fix? And you can. It's actually incredibly easy. But for the one-on-one coaching, I've seen companies becoming more proactive. So 15 years ago, it was almost always, oops, that didn't work. Can you come in and fix it? What we now get, we then progress to the more proactive. So we're promoting this person next week. Can you come and help them step up into the new job? Yeah. I would say in the last 4 or 5 years, I've had quite a high incidence of organizations bringing me in and saying, can you come in and work with this person and get them ready for what we want them to do maybe in a year or two's time? Yeah. So much more proactive. So it's gradually becoming a lot more proactive. And as such, I think the stigma of being given a coach in the organization is a good thing rather than a, whoops, that means you're failing. So as that perception has shifted, the acceptance of working with coaches. In parallel, we've seen in the last 10 years, the adoption of managers and others, like virtual or real or direct, using coaching skills in how they interact and get performance from people. Yeah. So that's been a gradually spreading influence, which makes people aware of this thing called coaching exists. And in the last 5 years, we're really starting to see in the bigger companies, the establishing of internal coach pools. Yeah. And in fact, I was talking to a regional HR head just a couple of weeks ago. And they were saying, a year ago, they were finding that every interview they did, the question that was coming up was, so what's the organization's approach to flexible working? Because everybody's learned that it can work, it's a it's a thing. They said this year, the question they're starting to hear more often is, and how do you provide coaching to your employees? So it's getting into that general consciousness, general awareness that it's a thing and it's a good thing and we want some.
Systemically, it has come in. Organizations are starting to see the real benefit, right? Obviously, working with external coaches and, of course, building what I call their bench strength internally with coaches, managers, supervisory levels, so that coaching conversation can continue after the coach has gone. So that is like a day-to-day kind of conversation that is happening within the organization.
Absolutely. And I think for me, a true coaching culture is one where everybody is using coaching skills, the communication skills that underpin it, as the way they interact with people. Yeah. And I think we're going to see an emergence of not just an expectation, but a provision of coaching interactions at multiple levels. So can be a challenge for even an internal coach to coach upwards to the C-suite. Because sometimes you got to kind of look them in the eyes and call it. It can be a tough one. Depends on the background.
Correct.
So there's a place for external coaches. There's a place for internal coaches. There's a place for managers using coaching skills. And I think the real growth is going to be just anybody in the organization who needs a little help that falls outside the boundaries of the manager relationship. They need to be able to access somebody.
Yeah, objectively, non-biased, without judgment, hopefully.
Exactly.
In your exposure of many organizations, and you still get the few these days that said, coaching, I've done coaching, I do it with my people, doesn't work. Some even say takes too long, right? Might as well go back to the old, I tell, you listen, you do. What's the solution around that?
So where I've experienced that is generally that their understanding of coaching is not the accurate one. Yeah. And there are two things that happen. They have a perception that using coaching skills in the organization, say as a manager with their staff, is an additional conversation.
It's true.
Right? They've been, oh, you must sit down every week and coach your people. And they go like, on what? Yeah. It's not like an external coach, you know. You hire an external coach for somebody, maybe they're going to meet once a week or once a fortnight or once a month or whatever, because there is something over a period of time that's being worked on. So it's a fresh conversation, right? The manager using coaching skills is not about sitting your people down. It's about having the same conversations you've always had differently. Stop solving their problems. So I think one of the failings is their understanding. Sometimes it may be how they've been taught. I've looked at some of the available kind of like online training on coaching skills, and it's coming from the external coach training. So you sit down with people for an hour and coach, like, why the hell would you do that? It doesn't make sense at all. So it's a mixture of knowledge and perception. And I think that will go away as the market becomes, as people become more educated in what coaching really is. And that we have to stop thinking about coaching as an intervention, a fixed intervention, and think about it as a way of communicating.
Very true. I like what your good friend, my good friend, Marsha Reynolds says, right? Coaching is a learning technology, right? So basically anyone can do it, right? We've got to kind of put that into our communication, our day-to-day communication. And it's, as you said, Tony, it's not just about, oh my gosh, I've got to sit down with someone for 30 minutes every week. It's like, I already do that with the WIPs and all this kind of stuff. And again, I need to set that in place. And sometimes I guess you've got to do a bit of that. But in most of the times, I agree with you. It's about putting that as a day-to-day lifestyle. It's part of our languaging, right? And how we bring that communication to the other person, another human being, as you said. So important.
Well, if you look at very simplistically, coaching is the process of making people think. That's it. So the core skills are there for everybody to acquire of how do you trigger people's thinking.
Yeah, that's true.
Then it comes down to the applications. So if you're a manager responsible for a team, this is how the application conversations happen. If you're HR helping people with their leadership skills, this is the application conversation. If you're the internal coach doing transitions, here's the application conversation. So we have to remember there are multiple applications for a core skill set. And I think the mistake I see is people are taught the skill set and just assume there is only one application.
Yeah. And talking about applications and short form apps, I know that you've got a coaching app. Tell us a little bit about that.
We have. It was something I started designing years ago, before the technology could actually support it.
Got it.
So we go back to what works, right? If you think about sort of training, learning, what we do in the classroom has been ripe for change for a long time. And we're starting to see it. The pandemic has accelerated things, and the technology is now there. So in the classroom, you do three things. You get some expert knowledge. You have some discussions around implementation. So how would that work in this situation? How would it work in that one? And you practice new skills. So those are the three things. My thinking was, if we break those three up, given what technology can now do and where you've got the bandwidth for it, text, audio, video of, say, me as an expert on my stuff, zero difference between getting it delivered through a mobile device and doing it in the classroom. Zero difference. Because the difference comes in the other two pieces. And you don't need to be the technical expert to be a good, competent coach facilitator to facilitate the other two pieces.
Yeah.
And if you then break it down, I mean, it's been proven that micro-learning is incredibly powerful. People only learn what they believe they need to learn. So if you can figure out moment by moment, what is it they need to learn right now? They will learn it if you just give them that bit. So you can then have those different conversations at different points in time. Technology and the pandemic is triggering the opportunity to open it all up. So the coaching app that I developed for working with my clients, both the corporate and the individual one, this year I've now done some changes and made it available. So individual people can get it to do self-coaching, building new habits and so on. If you're a coach, you can also have it and use it to work with your clients so that you can help them get measurable change. So it's a fun little thing. And it's an easy thing to find. If you go to thecoachingapp.com, that'll take you straight there.
There you go. With your years of computer science, you were saying before, and years of being a coach yourself, I'm sure this is going to rock someone's world out there. So go to that
the early career wasn't wasted, right?
You're right. Nothing is ever wasted, don't you think? Right? I came from a marketing advertising background. So whatever I see today is an opportunity to market something, right? It helps. It does help. Tony, through the years you've been involved with the ICF, it's a quaint little body of coaches coming together, believing in self-regulation, believing in the ethics and the values and all of that puts us, in some place professional. Yeah. What do you say to someone's new coming in, right? They've just finished their coaching certification and then thinking, shall I not join the ICF? Why should I join it? Is it another networking little group? What do you say today about that?
I think the biggest benefit, and it's ICF, EMCC, if you're in Europe, is an equal player there.
Yeah.
The benefit of being part of something like that, multiple, it helps, and what we've seen emerge. So maybe 20 years ago, people didn't ask, but if you want to do business with corporates today, first question they're going to say is, what's your level of credentials? Which professional body are you with? Right? Because whilst it doesn't guarantee how good you are at what you do, it at least says you've been weighed, measured, and trained to a certain standard. So I think it's helpful for anybody coming into the growing field of coaching. It's more helpful because there are phenomenal resources available. I discovered just last week that several of my fellow coaches here in Singapore who are at PCC level weren't aware of some of the learning resources that sit on the ICF Global website. There is a vast amount of stuff there. So struggling to find where can I get some more knowledge and more education, it's all there. You can go get it. I think the biggest benefit I found as a coach is that process of reflective practice. If you're working your way through the credentials, you have to practice. You have to, from time to time, get help. But self-reflective practice is the biggest learning. In the early years, there was no supervision. Mentor coaches were hard to find. I mean, quite literally, even when I've been doing it a few years and was ready to go for my MCC exam in sort of 2006, 2007, there were 100 MCCs in the world. That's why when you said, can you come on my 100 master coaches, they went, wow, that number means something to me, because that's how many there were when I was starting.
Oh my gosh.
And, so where do you go to learn?
Yeah.
But reflective practice is phenomenally powerful. Record yourself coaching. Listen to it yourself.
Yeah. So true.
Yeah. Analyze it against. I mean, just listening back to yourself, and you're like, oh, yeah, I got that. Yeah. So reflective practice, and I think credentialing structures with ICF or other places just give you a discipline. And if you don't have somebody watching, weighing, and measuring you, and giving you feedback from time to time, you don't improve.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're talking about going to the gym earlier, right? Yeah, and you see the guys in there, and they're just sitting there going like this, and they're not doing it properly, and nothing changes. Yeah,
very true.
Nothing changes. So that's my take on it. It's an essential thing, and also, I think what people have to realize is that ICF is made up of the staff, but there's a huge amount of work that gets done by the volunteers.
Yeah.
We put hours. I used to work on the local chapter years ago, but we've now got lots of fresh members coming through who've taken that over.
Yeah.
I now work whenever they need me on global task forces looking at stuff. So there's a massive amount of professionals like you and I behind the scenes doing work to help the coaches emerging into the business.
Very important. I remember in my days, Tony, I started about 2005, 2006, and a year later, 2007, I decided to be a part of the ICF, and I've never left since. I find it just like coming home to a family gathering during Christmas, right?
Yeah.
and yes, we've got that weird uncle on one side, and then we've got different cousins and other relatives, but we all have that commonality. And for me, it's that ground where we're all connected somehow, somewhere along the dots. We do it slightly differently based on all kinds of different things like culture and what we're exposed to in our learnings. But there is this thread that goes across. And I think that's, to me, the most beautiful part of it. I remember traveling overseas in different parts. And one of the things that came to my mind is like, I got to visit the local chapter there, right? It's like going to find your tribe. So yeah, that's my little story on how important the ICF is.
It is nice. I've done that a few times as well, sort of dropping in somewhere, and you find a bunch of strangers that you're immediately common ground with instantaneously. Yeah. Great conversations. Yeah.
With your 20 plus years of coaching, I'm going to ask you to kind of synthesize that and give us a couple of your top insights. I know you've said quite a lot already, but whatever comes to mind right now, and as you synthesize your years of coaching.
So I think a couple of things jump up. First one is, as you know, you never stop learning. I can remember 10 plus years ago or more, 15 years ago, used to go with my older daughter to a local karate class. And I can remember when we were getting to the stage where we were brown, black belt, getting ready to do black belt. And they suddenly said, okay, you're now qualified to come to the black belt training class. And we didn't even know that was a thing, because you thought you were going to get your black belt and you're it. Yeah. And then suddenly there's a whole new level of class, and now there's 8 more levels and you're the beginner. And their view was, once you get your black belt, you now kind of know what you're doing. Now you can start getting good at it. And I found something very similar with when you get to the MCC level.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. Okay. Now you know what you're doing. Now start getting really good at it. So it never ends, and you will always be improving. That can sound a little daunting. But the other thing that I noticed, I can take people who've never done coaching before, and I can sit them down, and in 2 days, I can have them doing a first application of coaching, the manager, stop solving the problems, teach somebody to think and trigger. And in a very short period of time, you can teach them how to do that. So even though the journey never ends and mastery may feel like it's a long way off, the fact that somebody simply sits down with another human being with no agenda other than to help, and with no judgment in mind, simply deeply listens to them, will help.
Yeah.
Nobody listens to anybody, really. We sit there waiting for that verbal full stop that says, you're done, my turn. The power of learning to connect with people.
So
and
true.
if you talk to some of the coaches around the world at the highest levels, they will talk about how we're coaching at an energetic level beyond just the words and the actions.
Yeah.
And when you learn to sort of listen from the subconscious and truly connect with somebody, you start to trigger just a little bit of that energetic level connection between people. And even the first stage beginner coach can make a difference.
Mm.
And I think I'd like everybody who's stepping into it to just be encouraged by that. Yeah. Don't worry about what you can't do. Know what you can do.
That is so beautiful. You kind of almost said that basically anyone can get into this and apply some sort of coaching into their field of influence. And then on the flip side, there is this whole opportunity ahead of each one of us to continue our journey into mastery. Just taking one step at a time, dropping down our own, what we thought was coaching, and allowing that shift to happen. When I look around and see all these wonderful master coaches that have gone before me, I see role models that are all over the world, just impacting at that level and just being an exemplar to so many out there. I know you're coming up with this program about mastery. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. See, I think the world needs more coaches. We are seeing this growth in the acceptance of coaching, and it manifests in internal coaches, managers with coaching skills, external coaches, even some of these platforms that go like, get a coaching session for $10 or whatever, that's just going to grow.
Yeah.
But if we look at the reality, take the places we know, Australia, Singapore, Malaysia. Once you get below the big companies, the multinationals, the sort of the B-class multinationals, the one that nobody recognizes the name of, but they're still fairly big. They may use coaching to a degree. But if you go down to the SMEs, now in Singapore, an SME can have millions in turnover.
Yeah.
And several thousand staff. Now, that's not a small organization.
True.
But we've got 240,000 of them or something. If just a small percentage of the larger ones, say 20,000 of them, if just the CEO of that company woke up to the possibility of coaching and wanted a coach to help him or her in how they lead their business, Singapore doesn't have enough coaches.
Oh, They need to borrow from Malaysia and Indonesia on top of that.
There aren't enough out there, right? So, I mean, you can just imagine. And Singapore is such a small place. So if we've got that potential number in terms of organizations where they'd be like, yeah, get me a coach. What does Australia look like? What does Malaysia look like? What does Indonesia look like? I think we are on the cusp of a wave of phenomenal demand for coaching as an interaction. Yeah,
I totally agree with you. You know, you and I probably meet a lot of coaches as well, and it's great. You know, they come in and they're like, I want to do what you do, Tony. I want to coach the top guys, right? Big companies, because they're good for my CV as a coach, right? And then I often encourage them and ask them also what really excites you, right? And some would say, you know, working with parents. And some would say, you know, working with these other groups in businesses, small businesses. And that's when I kind of am a little bit cheeky and say, hey, how about those areas? Have a look at those areas, because those could be a potential area as well.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Because one of the things I hear a lot being debated is, and a lot of it comes from the coach training schools, like find your niche, and the marketing expert, find your niche. And I did I did a live coaching demo for the first time ever last month on Gail Moore's program, and they were putting forward some people that, hey, you could coach this one or this one or this one, and people were in these little narrow niches, unbelievably narrow. You know, I coach poodle owners with green t-shirts, you know, and they've got no clients. It's like, no, coach anything that moves, right? I think that's how you should start off. Go through your coach training school, coach anything that moves that can afford to pay you a little bit. Right? And anything that's willing, because what will happen if you do the volume, the stuff you like, the stuff you enjoy, the stuff you're good at will emerge. Your niche will come out. I like those. And you know, do a massive amount of coaching in your first year or two, and by the end of that, you'll go like, yep, this is who I'm working with.
Yeah, you're right.
And that status thing as well. I can remember 2002 sitting with a group of other new coaches just establishing practices, and I can remember actually saying to people, I could not imagine me actually sitting there and coaching some silver-haired CEO. Yeah. And where are we now?
Yeah.
Well, you know, there's a lot of advantages to being the oldest guy in the room. So it emerges, it grows, it develops. So one of the things I want to do, because I think those of us who can do it have a responsibility to share, because there's very little advanced training out there. There are excellent coaching schools to get people started and get on the track. But those of us who've been doing it a long time, we know stuff. We know things that work. And I finally got inspired. You mentioned Marsha Reynolds recently, right? So earlier this year, she was doing her WBEX pre-summit. And somebody asked a question and said, if you're coaching for transformation, is there anything better than the GROW model? And Marsha just laughed and said, yeah, go to Singapore and talk to Tony. And then she was describing my approach to coaching without models. And it was interesting because that kind of provoked some conversations and people asking. And that was when I got a little light bulb moment of going, okay, you're not doing anything to share what you know and what you can do with the emerging coaches. So if you work in a corporate and they pay me to come in and teach you stuff, that's great, you're lucky. But if you're an independent coach, there's been historically no way you can get that from me. So in addition to having a community who can access my knowledge through the coaching app, I'm going to start running coaching masterclasses that sort of come in at the top level and go, okay, let me show you how to do this. Here's some cool stuff. Because I think we have, if the explosion is going to happen, and if we want coaching to stay pure and what it can be, then we have to make sure that people's skills are constantly evolving.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that's the other side of the equation, Tony. Getting skilled up, getting ready, getting credentialed, all a big part of it. I think sometimes coaches forget that they're running a business. So they've got to get in front of clients. They've got to know how to present. They need to know how to negotiate, influence, offer some sort of solutions to organizations. So it's a whole list of things that A, they've not been taught in coaching schools as well. And B, it is becoming an entrepreneur by yourself, right? And it's a lonely journey out there.
So you said your background is in marketing. So I was watching a thread and responding to a thread on LinkedIn just a couple of days ago. And somebody was being very vocal and criticizing coach training schools. And saying, yes, they don't take responsibility. They don't teach people how to build a coaching business. And I just made the point that, well, maybe that's because they don't know. Because if they're a successful coach training school and that's what they do, maybe their expertise is in teaching people to coach.
Yeah.
And from a business perspective, maybe their expertise is in selling coach training programs. Yeah. And that's very different from saying, here's how you actually go sell executive coaching.
Yeah.
So I think it's unrealistic to expect your coach training school to be able to teach you that sort of stuff. What we do need, and I think what there's a shortage of, is people who thoroughly understand coaching and know how to teach people how to build practices.
Yeah.
That sounded like from your background, that's something you know. Is that right?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so I'm going to line you up for a reverse interview then, because one of the things I'm doing, and it's going out through it'll be going out through a YouTube channel and through the coaching app, is when I find coaches who are doing something interesting, I'm doing interviews to help inspire the newer coaches to look at these areas. So I found somebody from Belgium who's now in Peru, who does coaching alongside functional medicine practitioners. Yeah, whole emerging area. Wow. I found somebody else in China who's doing coaching for teachers. So as we find those, I'm going to just use my platform to give that stuff away free of charge and say, here's some help for you. So it sounds like we need to tap you and your marketing knowledge on how do people build coaching businesses, right?
Thank you, Tony. We shall talk again, I'm sure.
We'll do that one. Yeah.
I'm really appreciative of your time. I'm more appreciative of what you're doing for our community. Just wanting to see a better day out there in the future for coaches and for the community, right? What is your closing statement, if I may, as we come to the end of this time together?
Am I allowed 3?
Oh, you may.
I think I just reiterate what we said already. Yeah. As you learn to coach, even your first little stumbling steps will help, will work. Yeah. You're already contributing. So just begin and continue to consciously improve. And just remember, coaching is just the process of making people think. And the world needs more coaches. That's the message. If you're in it, if you started the journey, don't give up. Too many. I believe the statistic in the last 15 years has not changed. Something like 80+% of people who go through coach training give up within 2 years because they haven't established a practice. I think those are the people we need to start looking at helping.
So true, Tony. So true.
Because otherwise it's just a wasted resource. It's like we're harvesting the crops and then we throw 80% away.
Yeah. I'd like to echo what you said about that. there is so much in the world that coaches have not seen the impact of what we can do with different communities all across. And you gave one example of that focus just on the large organizations. Imagine if we all could also think about the other ones, up and coming organizations. Yeah, wonderful. This is a time that I say, Tony, share with us some handles, some of your connection pieces so that people can come in contact with you.
So the main website is profitableleadership.com. You can get access to all the different works, the coaching masterclasses there. The coachingapp.com will take you direct to a part of that website. So that's where people can come and find me in the masterclasses if they're interested. I Google rather well. So it's benefit of being an old early adopter.
Yeah.
Right, you get entrenched. If you're a coach, look for me on LinkedIn. It'll be Tony Latimer. There'll be one there. Can connect, and I would encourage you to connect. If you're into coaching, if you've been coaching for a while, come and connect with people like me and Mel, and tell us what you need.
Yeah, true.
Because those of us who've been around a while have a lot of stuff we could offer, a lot of things we could do. You've got to tell us what you need. So reach out to us on LinkedIn, connect with us, and tell us what you need.
Beautifully said, Tony. It's my pleasure to host you today on the 100 Master Coaches Show.
No, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And with that, I say thank you guys for catching this with Tony today and myself, Mal. Catch you on the next one. Stay safe and take care. Bye for now.
You have been watching the 100 Master Coaches series with your host, Coach Mel, MCC. Brought to you by Catalyst Coach. www.catalystcoach.live. We will be right back with our next Master Coach on the 100 Master Coaches series.